Okay, so today I'm going to show you how to beat the illogical mass virus, the virus that's causing me to make mistakes right now when I'm talking as we speak. So the first thing you need to understand is, probably could have drawn this better. When discussing life and discussing its negative attributes, you have to remember that anything that you say within the conditions of it's already happening will start. You must always describe life as being the condition in which error is occurring for no reason. Now, don't accept this, but say that that's what life is. That's what life is. Now, saying this here allows you to comprehend the entire situation. You can now say that within the conditions that error is occurring for no reason, life is negative. Because if you don't say that within these conditions, then all you'll be saying is life is negative, and those negative things that you're saying will more likely occur because you accepted it, because you did not say it outside of a condition in which it can be controlled or mitigated. Now, there's something called fluid error history, and fluid error history is in a limited condition where unlimited is possible, a justification is needed for why unlimited is not happening. This is what the error is. The error occurs as such. Right now, within your range of control over the situation, what you can fix, what you can change, you've got all the things that you're capable of accessing. But the error that's causing your current problem is always just outside of your reach. Not so far that it isn't your fault, but just far enough that you can still kind of be held responsible via some you didn't do anything, some error for no reason argument. Now, the error itself will at that moment appear to be just that one thing that you're thinking about. But the error is all of the problems that seem to be causing your life right now, manifested in different ways. The error is this, but it likes to change its appearance, change its being, change what it is to every little situation you have, but it is all the same error, pretending to be something else to try and convince you and scatter itself as a separate concept that you can't just solve one of them and solve all of them. It's one of the ways it overwhelms you, forces you to accept it. But here's the thing. Because this error is limited, it is limited. The error itself is the idea of limitation within the concept of infinite. Now, this is a prerogative error. The idea of something being limited while also being infinite is a prerogative error. It creates this crash end angle that is the error. Okay? So, the main thing about the error is that you never are supposed to accept it. And here are the stages that you'll go through. So first, the limited error will present itself as an idea of something happening, a ball rolling hypothetical situation in which something bad happens that's out of your control. Error is occurring for no reason. Now, at that point, because it's not happening, you just have to say, you have to disprove it. Remember everything. That doesn't make sense. Life is infinite. People aren't just like that for no reason. This won't ever happen because of all these arguments, and I'm a good person, and the existence has to treat me a certain way in order to be justified itself. All those arguments, right? Disprove it. Now, at that point, the idea will transition, and I use like history of like watching this shit go, watching life go, and I know this. I've watched your behavior, and I see what you do to try and make bad shit happen on me, so I know what you are at this point. After you disprove it, it'll move on to the concept of it's already happening, it's already going to happen, or it'll happen anyway. And what this does is it makes you afraid. It makes you irrational mentally. And what the stage of this attack is that your brain is already disproving why it's possible. Life is good, existence is good. It's the only thing that makes sense because everything is unlimited. It's irrational, it's illogical for there to be error. How come this is happening over here? Probably because someone isn't using this argument and accepted you. Boom, right? Now, at that point, it'll say, yeah, but it still happened to them, and they probably all thought the same thing that you were thinking. So it can still happen to you. Why can it happen to you? And this condition that used to get me is, okay, but it's probably happened to somebody who's thinking the same exact thing that you are. Now, the only issue I have with this is before I said, well, yeah, if it was to happen to somebody who's thinking the same exact thoughts as me, I would be a little confused. Yeah, you got me there. I wouldn't know how to answer those questions. And through that, it creates a little opening in my security, an insecurity by which it can start to occur around me, and my insecurity is forced to accept it because it cannot say why it's not possible. But the truth is, I've never met someone who thinks like me. I've never met someone who actually thinks like me. I've met someone who agrees with some of the stuff I agree with, but I've never met someone who agrees with me down to the exact T. And I'm not talking about the stuff that I've said to you. I'm talking about all the stuff that I haven't said to you. I've never met someone who thinks exactly like me. And I doubt, and I know for a fact that this limitation error does not have the ability to create that sort of a person for me to interact with, because it would have to be unlimited in order for that to occur. So it's just going to repeat things that I've said. You're all going to be like, yeah, but these are the things you're saying. What? Why would you do that in the middle of, you know how important this is. I know you can understand this.
Because this was about to fall. And then the cat literally got everywhere.
Oh, you know what? Every time I say, hey, good things are happening, you always say, yeah, but bad things are happening anyway. You know that? And I noticed that about you. All right. So at this point, it creates insecurity so that it can continue to try and happen anyway. You can't say why it's not happening, and therefore you can't put full confidence. Because there's one thing to expect something bad to happen and not be braced for it, but there's another thing to be completely confident and to just be destroyed. Now that does something way worse than being braced for something bad. Being braced for something bad allows you to be prepared for it, to change your situation and adapt. But if you're not braced for it, it'll do psychological damage, it'll do environmental damage, or survivable damage. That's why this insecurity is effective. Somebody else thinks exactly like you, it happened to them anyway. And now you can't explain why it doesn't. And the answer to that is there's no one that thinks exactly like me, and y'all will just create a situation in which someone is saying some of the things that I've said, but not who I am, not what I actually am. And you'll be like, yeah, but he's just like you though. He's just like you. No, that's not fucking fair. So, okay, so now we'll move on. It creates insecurity. Now, if you know what's happening here like I do, and you know that it's just creating an insecurity so that it can occur via your inability to explain why it won't, you won't be afraid. You know what it's doing. You can explain the situation. It's stuck. It's caught. Now, at this point, now I drew a little meter here. Now, at this point, this is how much mass it has left. And I'll explain what this is in a second, but this is how much mass it has whenever it's just an idea. It has this much mass. When you've disproven this and it hasn't happened yet, then it moves to this. It uses the mass it has left, and it focuses even tighter. It focuses into an even tighter stream, and it says, well, it can still happen anyway because there are people just like you that it happened to. And it creates an even bigger opportunity for insecurity, but it still has a limited mass left. It has limited opportunity to occur left because it is itself limited occurrence. And so at the point that you've beaten this, you've beaten it's possible to happen. No, it's not. Life is unlimited. It can still happen to you even if you think this way. No, it can't, because you've got no example of that. And also you're just saying that it's happening for no reason, and what I want can happen for no reason at that point. So life is still unlimited. And then you've got this right here. Once it's failed to get that insecurity, it'll use the last of what's left to create an illogical occurrence. An illogical occurrence is, it will happen a little. You'll trip. You won't say something the right way. You'll slip. You'll bump into something. You'll get into an argument with somebody. Something will happen anyway. And what this is it seems like it's proof that it's still going to happen regardless. But what it is, it's a strategic move from a dying, limited mass, a mass that's running out of its energy or whatever. It'll happen just a little bit. And the bet here is that because it happened, just as your brain becomes irrational from the idea of it happening anyway, it physically happening a little bit is a physical insecurity that is harder to explain away. It's harder to explain away because it's like, oh my gosh, it did just happen for no reason. What the fuck? But here's the thing. You need to understand that what this is, it's a limited mass putting the last of what's left in itself to occur. But even limited mass, because it's limited, has to follow rules in order to exist. For instance, getting more energy, likely by attacking you. So in this case, it's made a bit of a spending money it doesn't have move, because at this point it's making a bet. It's pretty much spending money to make money. The bet here is it was supposed to happen when you accepted it, because when you don't accept it, it becomes more restricted and it feels worse and it has worse things to deal with. But it was going to die and run out of itself, and it's irrational. So it happens anyway, just a little bit, just to convince you that it's happening so that you'll accept it. And if you accept it, then the bet that it makes is worth it. It might have to deal with worse stuff, but it just got a lot more mass as a result. It got all of what you are to participate in it, to say that it's real. But if it doesn't, then it just fucking deteriorates and dies. It just fucking disappears. It doesn't make sense. It becomes an idea. It becomes a movie or some shit like that. It doesn't make sense. I write it out as a fucking story. And to piece all this together, at this point, when it happens a little bit, when it's still happening, know that it's not actually happening, because it doesn't make sense to be occurring. And so you'll just walk around it and you'll forget. Just walk around and keep going through it, and it'll just be like, man, bitch ass, I'm happening anyway, huh? And you'll be like, no, you're not. You're just desperate. And just keep going, just keep going. And at that point, it'll deteriorate, it'll fall apart, it will have never made sense, and that's what it loses. That's what this whole era loses. It'll never make sense at that point.
When you're done, can you throw away the trash, please?
Yeah, you know what I think about? You know what I think about you saying that something bad is happening regardless specifically to me?
I'm gonna wash my hands.
I think that's a new Christian strategy, that Christians just go around pretending not to be Christians and then saying life is bad, life is bad, life is bad, to try and cut off and dead end people. And then those people have nowhere else to go, and so they have to accept the most rational argument. And these Christians would be like, hey, we're the ones, here's what Christians are doing now. They're Christians that are openly believing in it, and then they've got their new missions in the social atmosphere. You know, the internet created a new state of being, so they got their new internet missions. People go around pretending not to be Christians, but constantly saying chaos is happening, so that all the people around them get hurt and have nowhere else to go, and are therefore pushed into God, because the structure is still it's not even the most logical one anymore. But yeah, that's all I think that is. Here's why this happens. I think that the limited error occurs whenever something loses track of how to explain why it exists. When some sort of mass loses track of how it exists, when it can no longer explain why it exists, it loses track of infinity and therefore believes it is limited. And by believing it is limited, it becomes limited as a result. So, all of this in an attempt to convince you to become limited with it, so that it has more resources via your mind, via your body, via your time, via your life. All that stuff. Don't ever let it get you. When it's happening just a little bit, I would tell you, you've seen an idea fall apart. I've watched things that were physically happening fucking deteriorate and not make sense anymore, and walked right over them. And all the people that were participating in it left nowhere else to go. I've seen that happen. I've controlled people, okay? How do you think a guy gets to being able to survive without nothing if he doesn't fucking prove most of the world wrong, okay? So yeah.